And joining us on Zoom is the Vice Chair of the committee, Councilor Linda Bacon. And before we get started, I need to ask for a motion to take a roll call vote that, for the purposes of this meeting, would be applicable to all motions. Applicable to all motions to remove an item from the table, place items on the table, package items, or suspend the rules unless there is an objection.
I make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we are open, and I have a request from Councilor Sullivan that we suspend the usual rules and go out of order to take up item 5.
I will make a motion to suspend our rules and go out of order to item 5.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I believe in our last episode of this order, we had a useful and complicated discussion with a number of people, including our city solicitor, who advised us that we, at minimum, need to have neutral rules for anyone commenting. I don't know that we had gotten to a point where anyone felt able to suggest rules or to suggest that perhaps the discussion had reached a natural termination point, and we might want to move on to saying that the order was complied with, subject to any of us coming back and developing an actual order that developed rules. But I thought I would just throw the discussion open at this point and see what the will of the body was. Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. Well, I don't think we should just end our discussion and call it complied with, because I do think we need to do a little bit of cleanup relative to the rules, because we're in a situation now where to Councilor Sullivan's point, we don't know who's talking to us necessarily, if they even live in the city. I mean, they could list any street and any number. And I think we do have a reasonable expectation that we know who is speaking to us in the public speak. The other thing that I found interesting that other communities do that I think would be beneficial would be to do a content neutral rule that says people can come in, but they need to be speaking to an issue that is on our current agenda or has been on an agenda. So that would keep the discussion focused on matters that are before the city council. I think that's something we could consider as a committee that came up in the last discussion that would have merit. So those are my 2 main points. I don't like to make things complicated. On the other hand, I don't like to see something that has been put in place with a good intention get sort of converted into something different.
Fair enough. And before I jump in, I'm going to see whether either Councilor Purcell or Councilor Sullivan, yes, okay, Councilor Sullivan. Or Rick, were you first?
We usually let the committee go first.
You
so.
go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So my intent on this is when we had started public comment, which was long before I even got on the city council, it was in person. Here, the person standing at the microphone. Now, during COVID, we started to allow Zoom. All right? COVID's over. COVID's been gone for a long time, yet we're still allowing Zoom, which I'm also fine with. I have no problem with that. But it's when people refuse to show themselves. They can put up, they're putting up political slogans, all kinds of placards. I've even seen gang signs thrown up, all right? So for these people not to show their face is, number one, I think, opening the door for all kinds of fraudulent behavior out there in the internet community, however you want to describe it. And it's not fair to the people that take the time to come here and the way it was originally intended to be used. All right? As far as, I think it was Counselor Thalheimer made a point about doxing, which I have never heard of before, right? But it's on, I see plenty of other people. I was just in a Zoom meeting for CPA where the person puts up a picture of themselves with the background blurred or themselves out hiking in the woods or whatever, but we know who it is. Yes, that's that person. This is Holyoke, it's a small community, we know who it is. But when people just post up stuff, and like I said, I've even seen gang signs up there, all right? It's not fair, it's not right, and we have no way of verifying who that person really is, especially in today's world with AI and everything else that goes on. So that's the piece I'd like to see tightened up. As Attorney Bissonette has informed us already, or agreed with us anyways, let me make sure I've got my notes here right. Public comment is not required. It's something we have taken on ourselves. It is not like a public hearing, all right, or a constitutional right to protest or freedom of assembly or anything else. It's the will of the council to invite people in to speak to us, all right? And that's what I'd like to see its original intent and restored to what its original intent was, even taking into account what we do with Zoom or social media, but to have these limits on it, show yourself. It's, besides everything else, think about this. We've lengthened the time of our meetings to do this. But we limit our own time to conduct our business. Come on. So I'm saying these are our rules. It's something we've allowed, but let's keep it. It's expanded and expanded. It's kind of like the old trying to put the genie back in the bottle now, as far as I'm concerned. But that's all I've got to say about it.
Thanks. Rick?
First, to the suggestion that people only come and comment, public comment, when the item's on the agenda. Some people can't be here for that particular meeting where the item isn't on the agenda. They have to go and probably they're on vacation, or they have to just stop. They just can't be here, so they'll comment about whatever they think is coming up, and everybody only gets 2 minutes. That's all you're allowed. And if we have a nefarious person doing something on the internet, Jeffrey has the ability to shut him down. Just completely shut him off. Somebody came on here and they hacked us, and you start going crazy, Jeffrey can shut him right off. So that eliminates that part. And to me, it's all free speech, and it's inviting the community to come in here and share their feelings about what's going on in our city. It's public comment. It's not public restraint. It's not public stop. It's public comment. They're coming in to comment. And if they're doing something bad, then Jeffrey and the president of the board can shut them down too. That's all. Thank you.
So through the chair, I am not trying to address what you just mentioned as far as limiting public comment or anything else like that. I want to know for certain who the person is. That's all. And when somebody can put up just a sign or a blank screen, that's not identifying who you are.
What about the requirement that we do have that people at least give a name and, depending on what we finally settle on as a rule, either an address or a ward number?
How do you know it's me?
I'm sorry?
Here I am. I'm on Zoom. How do you know it's me? I'm Mike Sullivan.
You're Mike Sullivan. And
How do you know?
how much does it matter? Because I am a child of the internet age, and I can get onto a fake internet account. I can put up somebody else's picture really easily. Many people would recognize my voice, it's true, but in an age of AI, somebody could fake me, I could fake somebody else. We don't have that guarantee. And it seems to me that what we're missing here is, it is relevant to know to some extent who a person is, because I know your background to some extent. When you comment, I know where you're coming from. In terms of a lot of general, I know you've worked in the city, I know that you have expertise in the building trades, all of that stuff helps me evaluate what you're saying. But in the end, it seems to me that where we're breaking down here is that what's important is not who somebody is, it's what they're telling us. And if what they're telling us is useful and accurate, I'm not sure it matters that we know who they are for 100% certainty.
The purpose of public comment was for the citizens of Holyoke to come and comment about affairs in the city. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't understand where the committee is going with trying to say that I'm presenting anything besides that. We have a citizens of Holyoke. I want to interact with that citizen and know that that is who I am interacting with.
But how much certainty do you need? Somebody says they're who they are. And this, to me, it's a little like all of the fuss about voter identification. This is Holyoke. I have never needed to show voter ID because everybody knows who I am. We all know each other. You show up in a Holyoke poll, and the folks are saying, yeah, hi, how's it going? And
If I may?
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I see you. I know you are Mimi Panich. When I see a cardboard sign, right? When I see a political slogan, when I see just a blank screen that says iPhone such and such, I do not know that that is Mimi Panich.
But
When you go to the voting poll, yeah, we sit there. Yep, that's my neighbor. That's my friend. That's my neighbor. That's my constituent. Right? You don't get that when a person doesn't show their face in person when they're on Zoom.
I'm just not sure that we need 100% certainty. Because, I've done it. You're on Zoom. You have one of your amusing backgrounds that some people find inexplicably scary. You don't necessarily have your face on the screen. And you just sort of trust that people will realize that you're who you say you are. And I suppose what I'm concerned about here is, where is the harm you see? If somebody says something that we don't particularly want to hear, that is not so obscene or threatening that we get cut off.
If I may, I am not suggesting that there's anything I don't want to hear from anybody. And this is what I don't like that happens with this council. My words are getting manipulated. My words are getting twisted. That is not anything that I am suggesting. I want to hear from all of our members of public, whether I agree with them or disagree with them. I value their opinions. I want to know for certain who I am talking to, and that they're a citizen of Holyoke, right? And if they are not, that we have taken the time to waive our rule and allow them to speak.
Okay, I want to apologize because I did not mean to insinuate what you heard me saying.
But that's what was being said.
Well,
Once again, this happens to me all the time.
I disagree with the conclusive presumption there, but that is not a fight that's worth having. It isn't what I meant, and
All right,
I apologize.
I'm done. I rest my case.
Madam Chair,
The committee's free to.
can I just give you a great example of
I have
one?
my hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up. You can go.
yes, go ahead, Councillor Bacon.
Thank you. I'd like to make a suggestion that we formalize in our rule relative to our public comment that as we had the informal rule ever since we started doing it, we formalize that we ask anybody speaking at public comment, regardless of which way they're participating, that they provide their name and address.
So you are suggesting, if I understand you properly, that we ask for a name and address, but we do not demand that they show their faces.
Well, that is the suggestion I'm making right now, because I'm thinking that in the case of Zoom or somebody calling in on a phone that might not know how to do the name, that they could make their name and address known to our administrative assistant so that our administrative assistant could let us know the name and address of the person, even if they're not able to show their picture. I'm just trying to come up with a way of knowing who the people are if they don't have the technical ability. But if the person has the technical ability to put up all sorts of other things on their Zoom, then they should be able to put their picture too.
Bingo.
So if they have that ability, then I think it's a reasonable request that they would provide who they are. If they don't want to be live, they can put their picture. But I would like to formalize it in our rule, because it was always understood that when people came into public comment, they give their name and address. Nobody is required to come into public comment. And as I commented earlier, for people who've been in the public and had their picture in the paper with their name published, they don't have an expectation of people not knowing what their name is. So, I mean, that's sort of a false flag kind of thing. So I'm supporting the notion that we should know who is speaking to us and that they should be from Holyoke unless we have specifically given permission that we're willing and wanting to hear from somebody who isn't from Holyoke, which we've done, I think, reasonably. And I think we, up until this very recent time, this whole process was going along fine without upset. So I think if we just formalize it, then we'd be okay. So that is I mean, I would make it as a motion that when people come into public speak, part of our rule is that we request that they provide their name and address.
Okay, before we get to the motion, Councilor Purcell was in line.
I just wanted to point out one simple thing. I was pointing at the picture on the screen right there. I can copy that picture from anywhere. As long as it's published somewhere, I can make a copy of that picture and put it as my background. And I can do that to you. I can do it to anybody I want and say that's me, even though it's not me. I could say it's Joe Smith, and Joe Smith could be any picture that I put up there. That doesn't mean I'm Joe Smith. That's doing something nefarious. And if they start saying stuff nefarious, we shut them down. That's all. Thank you.
I'll make these two really brief. Number one is, nothing I'm suggesting only applies to public comment. None of it applies to public hearings.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear about that. To Councilor Purcell's point, if that's the case, we originally put in allowing public comment by Zoom because of COVID. COVID's over. Maybe we should go back to what the original public comment was about. You come here, you stand here, and you address the council.
Okay, well, we obviously have a significant difference of opinion about how this should go, which I think ultimately we are going to have to refer back to the full council and let the council decide.
Yep.
And, that's the way it should be. We do have a motion from Councilor Bacon, and I would suggest an amendment to that because the way we got here, in part, was that there was a suggestion that it would be sufficient to have people identify themselves by name and ward if they did not want to give a street address. And, I think that's not an unreasonable thing, and as I recall, Solicitor Bissonnette did bless it as acceptable. So,
It's already a council rule.
I'm sorry?
That's already a council rule that they're supposed to identify themselves and their address, state their name and residence.
Yeah, but if we are going to in any way change the rule, I'm suggesting that we consider allowing them to identify themselves by ward. If it doesn't, I think however we introduce this back to the council, that will be an amendment that somebody seeks to make, whether we've made it or not.
Yep. All right, well, I appreciate the committees taking the time and moving me up in the agenda. It's been a long day for me,
Well, thank you.
whatever the will of the committee.
And I think, Councillor Bacon, you had a motion. And the motion was to create a rule that said explicitly that we expect everyone to give their name and address
Yes, for public speaking.
for public speaking, yeah. And just to try to complete the record here, I do take Councillor Sullivan's point that this is, remote participation is something that came in with the COVID epidemic. I think that, and I hope that the legislature is going to continue to bless it, because I think it gives access to many people who would not otherwise have access. And I do think we need to hear from as many members of the public as are willing to talk to us, despite the very real drain on our time, which, yeah, I know. And I personally would run later if we had to get through business, but I am one of many. But at any rate, if we are going to create such a rule, I would make the amendment now that we allow for identification by name and ward.
I'll second your amendment.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All
No.
against?
No,
Okay, right. And do we have a motion? No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make the comment that I think it defeats the purpose of knowing who the person is. And that's the whole point of it, is to know who the person is. Thank you.
So, is there a motion to?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councillor Tessa Murphy-Ramboletti has joined us, and I didn't realize it.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I know there's always a lot going on to try and see who's got their hand up. If I may, I've been listening and appreciate the discussion. I think I just wanted to I just wanted to point out that there actually isn't anything in our rules that does say that we have to require that folks participating in public comment to include their address. So I appreciate that Councilor Bacon brought it up, because it's always been a very vague thing for me, because I know there's past practice, but there's also the president has the discretion. And I think just given the times that we're in today, I don't think this was a decision by me that was made lightly. For the reality is that the world that we live in today is very different from the world that we lived in a couple of years ago. And so just being mindful of that is why I've been using my discretion to say a ward is fine. I think it does still reflect that you live in the city. It gives enough information to know where this person is living, and you can have the opportunity to follow up. I think for me, that's why I do appreciate knowing who is speaking to us, because as a counselor, I want to be able to either have a follow-up discussion or, keep someone updated on an item that is important to them, that was important enough for them to come to public comment. For me, that's why I value knowing who is speaking to us. I don't often, I care less about the individual and just more about what their feedback is, but I do like to have the opportunity to have some follow-up dialogue. But I know that my preference is not for everyone, and at the end of the day, I just wanted to give my feedback, because I think we live in a very different world and a very different government, and I want to make local politics should stay accessible. And if that means that folks need to continue to zoom in, I'm okay with that. Clearly, I'm zooming in right now. But those are just my thoughts, and thank you for the discussion.
Oh, no, thank you so much. That's actually very helpful to me because, this discussion obviously involves a bunch of different considerations and different orders even. And one of the things that I wanted to bring this whole topic up for was we have been having arguments in full city council meetings about what we're requiring from people Zooming in. And just having a rule is going to help, I think. So we don't have to get into it every time somebody doesn't want to reveal their name or won't reveal any information and we need to cut them off or whatever. So thank you. I at least found that very helpful. And Councillor Bacon, I see your hand up.
Thank you. So in the making of my motion, that we would ask for the name and address of people who wish to come to public speak, which 99% of the people do when we give them the sheet and ask them to put their name and address on it. And past practice is usually a strong predictor for future, but the intent in my motion that we would amend to formalize this in the rule is not to take away any discretion from our president, as it may become useful or important to do in a unique circumstance. And we have a history, and I believe in my experience on the council, when someone is asked to suspend rules for a particular reason, I don't even think I can remember a time where we didn't do that, or that we didn't respect the discretion of the president. So it's not to undo any of that, it's simply to formalize what we had always understood for years to be the practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to move that we do what is necessary, whether it is to ask our city solicitor to write something up or to write something up ourselves and bring it back to the committee for final review, that just puts into place a rule that says anyone who is speaking to us must give their name, must give the ward they're speaking from, the chair or the city council president or vice president, if they're substituting, has the discretion to waive the rules where it appears to be necessary or important. And to bring that forward to the city council for a vote. There is going to be, obviously, a split on the council. I think people have very strong feelings and they disagree about this. But it sounds to me like a baseline rule is going to be helpful. So I see City Solicitor Bissonnette online. Solicitor Bissonnette, do you have a sense of whether we should ask you to draft a rule or whether you should ask one of us to draft a rule for your review?
Good evening. I'd be happy to draft it. As I understand it, right now you seek to add anyone participating in public comment, either remotely or in the chambers, would be required to provide their name and the ward in which they reside to ascertain that they are a resident, and then they would be recognized by the president for the 2 minutes. I don't know, I didn't hear the outcome of the discussion. There was one on people having to go with video
I think
if you're remote, if you wanted to add that or not.
Yeah, no, I think we voted that down 2-1, with Councillor Bacon being the one for revealing face. I may be getting that wrong, and that may have been Councillor Sullivan, who is joining us, although not a member of the committee formally. But one thing that I intended to say and didn't is that I think it ought to be alternative. People who are willing to give their address certainly can and should. But one or the other. We need either the ward or the address.
So you would like either or language,
Yeah,
either their ward or their street address.
yeah. which has been our practice over the last few months, even though it hasn't been written up in a rule. And Councillor Bacon had her hand up a moment ago, but has not. Apparently, we've answered whatever the question was.
Well, I'm hearing that we would put name and address and/or ward
Yeah.
on the sheet, whereas right now it says name and address.
Yep, seems reasonable. It's what we've been
Okay.
asking for.
Are you
So,
making a motion?
I am making a motion. I am looking around to see whether anybody else has anything to say first.
So the piece that's still missing for me is when a person is on Zoom, right? And Counselor Purcell made a good point. We have Linda on Zoom and we see it's Linda. Somebody else could be faking it as well, but we also have, I believe, a rule in council chambers that political signage is not allowed.
That's true.
All right? So if somebody's posting on Zoom for public comment, that those same rules apply. Their name will be up there, or a picture, or just a plain name. But I don't care if you're, I don't care if you're Republican, I don't care if you're Democrat, I don't care if you're communist. You're not gonna post up political slogans, signs, or anything else besides what's here, what you are representing here. City business.
Okay, I'm going to have to go back to our city solicitor for a moment because my memory is imperfect of this, but I seem to recall that in the previous council, there was a discussion at one point about when signs were allowed in chambers and when they weren't. And, you know, before we say that they're never allowed on your Zoom feed, I just want to confirm that we're on solid grounds doing that. So, Solicitor Bissonnette, if you have advice for us.
To look into that one a little bit more on a First Amendment basis, to see whether or not, for example, if someone had a screen up and instead of my name, it said, vote for Mike Sullivan, he's the best there is. That could be something that you want to block because it's content. So the question is, can you block political content? You can make a rule that says, well, whenever this guy who thinks Mike Sullivan's great wants to speak, he has to unblock so we can see who he is. So that's, you know, the rule is you can put certain requirements in. For example, you can make people unblock their video on Zoom as one of your rules, just so you can identify someone. So I think that the problem, Councilor Sullivan, is that when you get into the freedom of speech angle, when you start making these rules, it becomes problematic. And I say that not only from a political standpoint, ICE or Free Zimbabwe or whatever you wanted to say, but also there is some question about whether or not any of this can be done in light of the rule that Massachusetts has now adopted through the Supreme Judicial Court, that the public has a pretty free rein in saying what it wants in public meetings. Civility be damned. And that was surprising to a lot of us, but people are allowed to come in and cuss, and the court found that that's within their rights of free speech. So I'm not sure how that would play out, and I'm not going to say anybody would file a court challenge based on the First Amendment, but it's something to consider because I personally think it would be asking for such a challenge from those who might be offended by such a rule. And it may not be, one of our frequent flyers who'd like to comment, but it may be someone that wants to take this up a notch. So I would be cautious about that. But thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Okay, well, going back to where the motion was, I was going to move that we ask our city solicitor to draft a rule that says, basically, you must give us your name and either your address or at least the ward where you reside for public comment, and leave it at that without attempting to police what we see on the screen from here. So that was my motion. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
I'll second that for now. I mean, we can always do other things later.
Okay, so we have the motion, 3-0, and we look forward to your draft. Thank you very much. So,
And my thanks to the committee.
Motion,
okay, so motion to take up
I
item
was
2.
going to say motion to take up item 1, but I heard somebody talking.
Oh, that's right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Item 1 is the minutes of the March 2nd, 2026 meeting. Does anyone have any corrections or comments?
I have one minor correction. Under item 9, it says expect it says accept. It says expect, but it should be accept. It's just a transposition. It's a minor technicality.
Okay, I would move that we accept that correction and otherwise approve the minutes as corrected. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to take up item 2.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Item 2 is an order from Councilor McGrath Smith and Councilor Purcell that the City Council adopt a home rule petition petitioning for the right to locally prevent the sale and use of eschar rodenticides despite state preemption. And we have the language that has been used by other communities that are requesting the same thing before us. And Councilor Purcell, this is your order. Would you like to present it, or would you like me to keep going?
You can keep going.
Okay. So just for anybody who is listening to this meeting who has not heard previous meetings about these rodenticides, to put it very briefly, they are used to control mostly mice, rats, vermin. They are a technology that has proved in actual use to be extraordinarily dangerous to wildlife, to pets, and to the natural systems that control these rodents in normal circumstances. The rodents die, they're eaten by people's cats, they're eaten by hawks, they die, they wind up littering our streets, children investigate them and get into trouble. The ecosystem is devastated, they are bad. Currently, Massachusetts law does not enable cities and towns to ban them, but there is a growing movement in the State House to at least allow us to do this on a city-by-city basis, while the legislature itself considers whether to do it statewide or not. And we have a model motion that was filed by, which city was this?
Arlington.
Arlington. And rather than having to draft our own language for this, if we are willing to make the same petition, all we really need to do is to send this language over to our city solicitor and swap out the name Arlington for the name Holyoke. It is a longish resolution. We have it in writing, and the question is whether anybody feels we need to read it into the record here. Hearing no
She's got her.
Yes, Counselor Bacon.
Can you just summarize specifically around the preemption, the sort of bottom line of the resolution? It's simply saying, as I understand it, that the local city may ban it even if the state has not, and that they're providing an exemption. Is that the bottom line?
That's the bottom line.
Okay.
Right, yeah, right now it's just like rent control. Even if we wanted to do it, we can't. And
Okay.
the petition, we join, I think it's a dozen other communities now, it may be up to 24, asking for an exemption to allow us to do this.
Okay, so I would make a motion that we send this to legal to put in legal form to come back to committee to review at our next meeting.
If you don't feel it's straightforward enough that we can ask for it to go into legal form and go straight to the full council, sure.
I prefer it. I think it's a cleaner procedure so we don't end up like we did last night.
Maybe. Well, okay, motion has been made, I will second it. All in favor? Unless, Rick, do you want to?
No, I just want to make sure that the city of Hoyoke stands by this petition and enacts it. That's all. It's an important thing.
Yeah.
To ecosystems, to pets, to environment. It's just an important thing to do.
Right. Some of us remember the DDT.
Some of us remember asbestos. Some of us remember cigarettes.
Yeah. So, yeah. So that is the motion, and we will send this over to legal, and for once, I think we are not giving legal a huge chore.
Do you want ayes?
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, thought we'd already done that. Okay. Item 4.
Motion to take up item 3?
Yes. I don't know why I went ahead, but item 3 was filed by Councilors Panich and Devine, ordered that the Holyoke City Council petition the General Court to amend the residency requirement set forth in Section 45 of the Holyoke Charter as it relates to elected officials. The current provision requires that a candidate for elected office have been a resident of the city for the prior 2 years and should be reviewed for both the desirability of the policy and its consistency with state law. And, when we talked about this last time, Councilor Devine felt very strongly that we should just strike the 2-year residency requirement. And I am inclined to agree, in part because I'm not sure it's even legal. But this is, if we want to do it, a simple change, and I'm going to ask our city solicitor once more whether he has an opinion as to doing this and the value or the legal threat we might have if we don't. But first, Councilor Bacon, I do see your hand.
So I did a little bit of homework on this, and what I found is that our state law has general eligibility requirements, but that it is up to local communities to establish residency requirements if they so choose, and that there is a variety throughout the state. So I don't believe there's any violation of state law with our 2-year residency requirement in our charter. However, I don't think it's unreasonable to talk about how long it perhaps needs to be. I think some of our neighbors, and I'm not totally sure if I'm right, I think they have a year. And I would make the point that I think there's some value to it because we do have a pretty high turnover in people who move into and out of our city. And if people are running for office, I think we want to know that they've at least been here for a while and hopefully will be here for a while if they're running for office. But that's just one thought relative to it. But I don't think we're doing anything illegal from what I could see. Attorney Bissonette might have a different take, but I couldn't find any. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Bissonnette, are we on firm ground requiring, either a period of this length or a period generally?
Well, I think, first of all, let me confirm that Councilor Bacon is right, that there is no prohibition. The city can establish additional requirements for eligibility to run. Here's the problem with this one. What 2 years are we talking about?
Yeah.
The example I think I used last time was Mayor Morris, or someone in his situation who left, went to college outside the city for 4 years, lived there, came back and ran for office and was elected. So I don't know if that's a good or bad example in this case, but it raises the question of what if you left Holyoke at age 20, went to work somewhere else, came back at 28, could you run right away? Because you've lived in Holyoke for 20 years, just haven't lived there for the last 8. So I think that is something that is in need of greater definition if that's going to stay. You can say, the past 2 years, use the word past, use consecutive, some kind of identifier within that phrase. If you wanted to eliminate it, you could certainly go to something similar that the state uses for determining eligibility. I think it's for state rep, it's 1 year. You have to be resident of that district for 1 year. And I think it's a resident, not registered voter. I think it's just a resident, but I'd have to check. But that option is available as well. And, the other option is to eliminate it. But let's remember, in terms of resident law within the confines of the charter, we also have a rule that removes someone from the council from any elective office, should they no longer be a resident of the city of Holyoke.
Yeah. So my concern with this had been that some years ago, we had a mayoral candidate who, did not win election, but there was a controversy over whether he was actually eligible to run. And I think, fortunately for the city, nobody from Mayor Morse's team actually mounted a legal challenge. So we didn't get resolution. And, my thought was sort of, it would be good not to have that kind of thing hanging over a future candidate. But I don't feel strongly about this one either way. I see arguments on both sides. And before I go back to Councilor Bacon, Councilor Purcell,
No,
do you want to jump in?
go ahead.
Okay, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. I just threw the chair to Attorney Bissonnette. I was just wondering, in the example of the person who lived here previously, came back and ran. I'm going to guess there wasn't a challenge because they had lived here for 2 years. Is that the case?
You're
I
muted.
think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I think that was a hypothetical.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's a situation where it could be challenged if the city clerk were to say, and the law department at the time were to say, well, based on the strict ruling of this language, you cannot run, you haven't lived here the last 2 years. And they could challenge it saying, well, it doesn't say last 2, it says have to be a resident for 2 years. Well, I was.
Right.
So that's why I'm asking for clarification. But certainly, you can put in, must have been a resident for the past 1 year or the past 12 months, if you wanted to use that type of language.
So just to clarify, if we did that though, and we said the past 12 months in your example of the person who had lived here for 20 years and say left for 4 years and came back, then even though we made the time period shorter, that person would not be eligible.
Say it had been a resident for the past consecutive 12 months. That's
Right.
how it's interpreted, yeah.
So that would rule out somebody who moved back, whereas right now, it doesn't sound like that person would be ruled out
Okay,
under the
Well,
current
they
language.
wouldn't be ruled out if I was their lawyer.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think we want to make it so that more people would be ruled out that had lived here a number of years and then came back. I would think we'd want to leave it so they could run. But that's just my opinion. I mean, I'm sort of looking at this of, if it isn't broken, do we need to fix it? I mean,
Rick, did you want to?
Yes,
Yeah.
please. I'm just of a mind that to be a resident, and 1 year may be long enough. Because I'm old enough to remember we had a city councilor on the city council, a sitting city councilor that had 2 businesses in Hoyoke, but he actually lived in Hatfield. He laid his head at Hatfield, and he was an elected city councilor, and he claimed he was a resident even though everybody knew he lived in Hatfield. And that's just an example, because he'd been a long-term city councilor. I'm not trying to deviate from the issue at hand. I'm just saying, as long as you're an actual resident that sleeps in the city of Hoyoke, 1 year is good enough. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to just jump in here and say that because this is Councillor Devine's order, that, I did file along with her, but she can't be with us tonight, and I think perhaps since it was important to her, we ought to put this back on the table and take it up again at the next meeting so that she can participate in this discussion.
all right, in light of that, I'll make a motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion to take up item 4.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item 4, filed by Councilors Bacon and Grady, order that to add a rule that any city councilor named by a speaker during public speak has 2 minutes to respond at the end of public speak. And we have discussed this, I think, on previous occasions. In fact, I know we've discussed this on previous occasions.
Yes.
I am not sure if there's any, Councilor Purcell, yes, please.
And I said it before when we brought it up before. I just don't want a dialogue where we have 2 people arguing about something over city council, because we just had a big lengthy conversation about taking up council time with public speak. This is that. We're taking up council time with public speak by having the city council respond back to the citizen. That's pretty much it. And I don't want to, Donnybrook, and our president is on the meeting with us. I think it might even not help her run the meeting properly. That's all.
Okay, Councilor Bacon.
Well, in light of some of the concerns, what I'd like to do is offer an amendment that says that a city councilor named by a speaker during public speak may have up to 1 minute to respond at the end of public speak, which does not give anybody the ability to debate because the public speak is otherwise over. So it would limit the time. It says may, it's not a shall. So it's not a duty to provide, but it's an option.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, so that motion fails for want of a second. I am going to make a motion that we, what's the language for this? Recommend that the order not be adopted back to the city council.
Leave to withdraw.
Leave to withdraw, thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Councilor Bacon?
No,
Okay.
No.
2 to 1. Leave to withdraw.
motion to take up item 5.
Okay. Second? Wait, we already did item 5.
Oh, 6.
That's the one we took up out of order. Okay.
On six.
So
I changed it to 6.
Yeah. Okay. Item 6, that was Panich and Tallheimer, ordered that the council rules be examined and revised as necessary to clarify the Rule 9 provisions relating to legal forum and committee procedure. And, it was my hope that I would have time to provide a draft by tonight. I did not have time, and, I would just as soon table this and move along. Is there a second?
Motion to table.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion.
Motion to take up item 7.
Okay. Item 7, that was Panich, ordered that the Honorable Holyoke City Councilor petition the Great and General Court of Massachusetts to amend Section 15 of the Holyoke Charter to reflect the new appointing authorities to financial departments be set by ordinance. And that was tabled because there were concerns about the actual language we had in front of us. And we have a new red line from the city solicitor's office, which is somewhere in this packet. But, I reviewed it.
I didn't see it before the meeting. Did we just get it?
No, it's been in the jacket for
The red line version is?
the red line version, yeah.
Okay, maybe I just missed it.
I'm looking at it right here.
Which number is it?
7.
Ah, thank you. Okay. And, the corrections that were requested at the time had to do with the, yeah, it's harder to see when I have black line instead of red line. But, we changed the gender and made them gender neutral in paragraph A. In paragraph C, there was a question about electing assessors, which has been clarified. And section D is the change for the, taking out the treasurer, who will no longer be elected, and reflects the new, it just takes out the treasurer. It does not actually lay out the new appointing authority. But clearly, we are no longer electing the treasurer, and I would like to, if possible, vote to send this on to the city council tonight.
Great.
Is that a motion? I'll make a motion that we do that.
I would second it, under discussion. Councillor Bacon?
So, thank you. So this is the section of our charter that we just changed for the city council to appoint the treasurer.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And so our charter that's in effect is still in effect until such time as, oh, thank you for sharing that, because I cannot find it in my documents for this meeting for some reason. Was it in an earlier email, Jeffrey?
It was sent out on Friday.
Because I got the minutes, but I didn't see this.
Yeah, I sent the minutes yesterday, but this was with the packet that was emailed on Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the thing that, of course, this cannot go into effect until such time as it goes through the legislature.
Yes.
And so what is the approval time relative to this petition? Upon approval of the home rule petition?
Yes. I think that's probably a question for our state representatives.
Well, I think we could ask Attorney Bissonnette how that timing would work, because if we're saying that our intent is that we're changing it before the state legislature approves it, then I think we would have a problem, because we have a current charter enforced, as you all know, that I'm arguing we should be following and appointing a qualified treasurer. So I just want to make sure that if this is going forward to the state legislature, that I want to understand that the thinking is that this would not be in force until such time as the home rule petition is approved by the state legislature. And I'd like to hear from our attorney in that regard.
Attorney Bissonette, over to you.
Until it's signed by the governor.
Okay,
That's when it amends the charter.
Okay,
Pursuant
thank
to
you.
the ballot question in January, the city council was authorized to create an ordinance to further that amendment that the voters made to the charter, and that's what the council has done. So there'll be an argument for sure about whether the ordinance that you pass prevails in this period of time between the charter vote by the public and the actual enactment of these changes into the charter.
Except I would beg to differ in the one point
So I'm
that,
not looking to have an argument with you, I'm just explaining the fact.
well, right, but the ballot question said that the treasurer would be appointed by the city council. And then it further said that the qualifications would be set by ordinance. Right?
You'd agree with me that that is what has happened.
Well, the requirements for the qualifications for the position were set by ordinance, but the other ordinance that changed the appointing authority cannot be changed by ordinance. It has to be changed by charter.
Was? By the voters.
Well, that's what we're
But,
talking about.
you have your opinion, and then
Well,
there's the law, so have a nice day.
well, we're talking about the charter right now, right?
We're talking about a charter amendment. It came
Right.
before us as an amendment to conform to the new financial authorities ordinance structure. And
Right.
I think it was always the intent that we move this as quickly as possible so that everything, in fact, does line up with the new appointing authorities. And, I think strongly at this point, the time has come to send this to the full council and let them consider it.
Well, the delay in the appointment has been to deny following our current and approved charter signed by the governor and approved by the state legislature, which,
Nevertheless,
as you know,
yeah,
nevertheless, let's not worry about our current charter, right?
I think that this is not a debate we should be having here necessarily. There are legal questions, but this was the enactment procedure, and I think it is time we enacted. And I am, thus my motion, and
Seconded.
it has been seconded by Councillor Purcell. And, are you objecting to taking a vote tonight?
Well, what I want to do is make my points, whether they're agreed with or disagreed with, because this is the Charter and Rules Committee, and I would think it is the exact place that we should be having the discussion. And I believe the intent is that when this change is made to the charter, this change will be followed. So my point is, if everybody's all on board to follow this change, which you're using an ordinance to drive a charter change, and the charter is the controlling document, not the ordinance, then we should be equally committed to following our charter as it currently exists. And the council has been, and this committee is, which my order was sent to, apparently to die, because this committee is showing no interest or intention to fulfill the current requirements of the charter and have the city council appoint the treasurer.
Excuse
And
me.
because-
Excuse me. I think at this point it is important to point out for the public that the open meeting law forbids having that on the agenda tonight, which is why it is not on the agenda tonight and why I do not feel we should be discussing the order that you passed last night.
Well, I didn't say it should be on the agenda tonight. I'm simply saying that's why it was sent to committee.
We sent it to
And
committee. The
my-
open
my-
meeting law forbids it.
My
We did not
point
have
is-
time to post it.
And the point that I'm making is we should be as equally committed to following our current charter as I am hearing put forth we will be to support this new charter. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Purcell.
Move the motion, please.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Thank you. On to the next item. And, item 8, and I was late on this, so we can certainly table it again if it is the council's or the committee's wish. This is ordered that Council Rule 8L be amended to conform to the council's practice with respect to approval of amendments to said rules, and further ordered the council take such measures as are necessary to affirm that rules amendments adopted in the past without strict compliance with Rule 8L, as currently worded, shall be deemed to have been validly adopted. And this is a very simple amendment. The thing is that Rule 8L has had a provision saying that in order to amend or remove a rule, the council had to have notice at the previous meeting, whether or not the previous meeting had any relationship to a rule change, and despite the fact that if there was a rule change, there had to have been an order that gave the council notice we were considering it. And it turned out that it has been the council's practice for ages and ages to just ignore the thing about it shall be noticed at the preceding meeting and no other preceding meeting. So we have all of these rules changes that, strictly speaking, were not accurately adopted. So the order was just that we amend 8L to say that notice is by putting in the order and having it referred to committee, and anything previously adopted shall be deemed to have been validly adopted. And I only got to it this afternoon. I sent potential language to Jeffrey and to our city solicitor, but I will completely understand if people want to just put this on the table for next time. So, Councillor Bacon.
Yes, I support the idea of tabling it because I don't think we have the ability to go retroactively on votes that we took or a different council took. So I think we can only go forward. But so I'll make a motion to table.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And item 9, which I would suggest that we suspend the necessary rules and take this up as a package with item 10.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this is one that we may also, I wanted to get City Solicitor Bissonnette's opinion about how much discussion of it we wanted to get into tonight. He had suggested some changes to Section 22, which involves when we can vote and the voting threshold for amounts or items involving expenditure of more than $200, which was an odd threshold. But the other odd thing about the provision as it exists is that it contemplates notice to the city council of certain expenditures, and then we can adopt them by simple majority vote, unless we're adopting them the same night, in which case it has to be a supermajority vote and the mayor has to agree to it. And it seemed to me that this was obviously like an anti-stampeding provision. The idea is that nobody should be able to come into city council and say, we must spend this money now, no thinking aloud. And if we have to do that, it requires naturally a higher voting threshold than if we're going to take our time and think about it and know that everybody's had a chance to consider the implications. But that also raised a question that I think we had an email exchange about, which is whether it makes any sense to, keep the other provisions unclear as to the voting threshold for ordinances or any other kind of normal vote. It seems to me that the structure of our charter clearly implies that ordinances are supposed to be adopted by majority vote, not by supermajority, as our Code of Ordinances currently requires. That was a recent change, the ordinance change, I mean. And there was an effort to amend the charter to reflect that in the last session, which was rejected by the then council. So this is a complex series of provisions. They interact, and I would be happy to start talking about that tonight if Councillor Bissonnette is ready to start talking about it and feels it's appropriate. And, if the rest of the committee is ready, and yes, Councillor Bacon, I do see your hand. Rick, did I overlook you? No. Okay, good.
So my question is, my reading of the charter simply says that the city council establishes the ordinances. Can you give us the part of the charter that you're referencing that says it should be a majority vote? Because I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it also doesn't say it's a supermajority vote anywhere. But if you look at one of these sections, I am now blanking on which it is that has the veto provision. It does say, the city council passes ordinances. The mayor has the right to veto. If the mayor vetoes, it is a 2/3 majority, and yes, Councillor Purcell is pointing me to section 24. If we override that veto, that's a 2/3 majority. It makes no sense and is also not part of the general American systems of government nationwide to say that you have a supermajority vote and then the mayor has the right to veto that. Because if you have a supermajority, you already have the votes you need to override. And all the veto becomes is, well, gosh, think again, maybe somebody will change their mind. But if you have those provisions, it usually means that what you're looking at is just a majority vote. And why we would insist on a supermajority in a culture that otherwise is majority rule and read counterintuitively, I cannot imagine. So, Councillor Bacon.
Well, I appreciate how you're reading into the meaning of the separate section relative to veto, but I just don't see where it's the charter really dictating anything relative to how we pass our ordinances. I mean, I totally understand that the ordinances can be changed through the ordinance committee, but I don't see where the charter is compelling a majority or a supermajority, because when the mayor vetoes something and provides his reasons, I think it's very likely any number of councilors might reconsider their position on a vote. So I don't think one cancels the other, but I think that would be a debate for ordinance, because our charter is silent on how we change our ordinances. So I don't see why we need a charter change relative to how we vote on ordinances.
Well, I think we need the charter change precisely because I think that this is very likely a scrivener's error in our charter. I think that it was so obvious that it is supposed to be a majority vote that nobody ever checked to see that it actually said that. And I think that on a policy level, I agree that we ought to be having this discussion also in ordinance, there is an ordinance, or there is an order to do that sitting in the jacket that will come out eventually when ordinance has time. But meanwhile, I think it is a very good idea to get this clarified and to make it a rule so that we are not constantly going back and forth in ordinance about should this be a majority, should it be a supermajority, do we want consensus, do we want for a relatively small block to be able to prevent movement forward on something that a majority wants, which I think has also been the story of the last year and possibly more of the city council. And I think as a matter of policy, we ought to do it. I think as a matter of making the charter actually do what it was supposed to do, we ought to do this. And, the one thing that I want to make sure of is that when we examine the charter, we're doing it coherently and we're looking at the interlocking provisions. Yes. So, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. I hear your arguments. I just do not find them persuasive relative to how we would be voting to establish an ordinance since we already have an ordinance on it. We just had a vote where you're taking away things out of the charter to establish them by ordinance instead of having them in the charter. In this instance, you want to put something in the charter that the charter is silent on, which we can address very easily through our ordinances. So I am just, I hear what you're saying, but I just think you're just trying to codify the majority vote in a way to make it more difficult to ever change it again. And I don't see where the charter says majority or it says supermajority. So why don't we let it say what it says, which is the city council establishes the ordinances.
Yes, that's what.
And then if you want to change the ordinance,
I would
votes
just
are there
point.
to do it.
Yeah, I would just point out at this point that the previous city council, there was a group of people who felt strongly enough to move the attempted charter change to establish a supermajority vote via the charter. That was, I believe, it came forward for the final time on October 7th. It was rejected by the then council, but it was clear that there were people who felt that rather than doing this by ordinance and relying on the fact that the ordinance then said supermajority, that it was really terribly important to get this enacted into the charter so that it would be difficult to change. So I am merely following their example, except that I believe very strongly, and I will make the argument to the council as a whole, that what was intended originally and what we should follow is the almost universal American practice of letting the majority rule. And yes, we ought to make that difficult to change. It should be in our charter. And with that, we're obviously not going to agree, but I would like to ask our city solicitor whether he thinks this is a discussion that we can productively have tonight, looking at these three provisions of our charter, or whether I should table it and we can attempt to develop the materials we need more thoroughly for the next meeting.
One of the things that's always interested me about municipal law is that unlike Congress, where a majority can pass anything, unlike the Massachusetts Great and General Court, the legislature and the Senate, they also can pass anything by majority vote. I think it's a misreading of 22 and 24 and it always has been, to require that ordinances be approved by 2/3 of the membership. And I say that because the reading of 22 and 24 is consistent with majority votes. And at the time of the creation of these charters, they were following examples that had been set in Washington and Boston. So it is a strain, I think, to find language in here that compels the notion that it takes 3 votes, and the third vote has to be by a by a 2/3 vote to pass an ordinance, to enact an ordinance. I see that nowhere in here. I see it nowhere in state law. So I'm not sure where that came from. Contrary to some belief, I wasn't around when this was written. So there's, there is, to me at least, the argument that a majority vote after consideration is allowed. If you tried to do it the night of course, you have the 2/3 rule, along with the requirement of mayoral endorsement. It seems to really stretch the point that 2/3 would be required other than in that situation or in a veto. And if you look up to 22 for some help and say, well, that just says every ordinance, order, et cetera, except for its own business, over the amount of $200 can be passed by a majority. Well, now, I'm not sure ordinances often have costs assessed to them, but again, that's the lack of clarity in 22. Today, you want to use 200? 200 is going to be the going rate for a ream of paper pretty soon.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't, in the modern age, has no bearing. You could take that out and it really doesn't mean anything. So unless there's something specific requiring a different quantity of vote than a majority, I don't see the reason for that to continue if it was a mistake.
So, just to follow up, and Councillor Bacon, I do see your hand. I'll get to you in a second. The proposed change to clarify that what we mean in the charter is that a simple majority is the default, and veto, you overcome that with a 2/3 majority. Just the language to clarify that that is what the charter should mean. Is that something that you think is worthwhile to talk about tonight, or would you prefer to put it off for a subsequent meeting? Just so we can have language available. And you're muted.
I'm sorry, were you asking me?
I was asking you because,
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'd be happy to get back with a draft on 22 and 24.
okay, and Councillor Bacon, whose hand was up a moment ago.
If we're going to request legal to provide us with some language to look at for 9 and 10, I'm happy to ask it to come back to committee
Okay, then,
and make the request for the language to come back to committee and then table it for receipt of the legal proposal.
okay, sounds good. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. And thank you. We'll be talking. And motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody, and thank you.
Good night.